morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever or wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Mark Edwards, and this is the Channel Zone podcast. Today's guest is Donna Joyce. Now, Donna is a public sector account director with Okta, specialising in Auth0, the product. And Donna's career spans organisations. I hope you won't mind me going all the way back because they stick with me. The likes of Computer 2000, Aslan, then into Dell, Symantec, CenturyLink, and now at Okta. Donna has built a reputation not only as a highly capable sales leader and as an individual contributor, but as someone deeply committed to enabling the success of those around her, be they team members, colleagues, partners, and even customers. In her work today at Okta, Donna helps organizations implement world-class identity solutions, improving security, accelerating innovation, reducing complexity, and ensuring that every user experience is as seamless as possible. I think that must have come off the Auth0 website.
It certainly sounds it on my LinkedIn bio.
It certainly does. There, you've got it. But Donna's story begins somewhere very different to today's sales floor. Indeed, she started out in the equestrian world, starting off at an early age as a groom, and was soon supporting the horses and riders competing in three-day eventing. The discipline, the routine, the attention to detail, the early mornings, and the respect for and the expectation, I think, of excellence in that equestrian world, those demands have stayed with her ever since and have surely shaped the leader that she is today. So she's passionate, she's curious, she's people-focused, and so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Donna, it's great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Great to see you again.
Super. Well, look, in the words of Dylan Thomas, in my best Richard Burton voice here, to begin at the beginning, which is how Under Milk Wood starts, by the way. But to begin at the beginning, you began your working life in professional stables, working with elite equestrian competitors in three-day eventing. So can you let us know, what was that world really like up close, and what did it teach you about things like discipline, responsibility, and showing up every day?
Yeah, sure. I think fundamentally I'd been riding horses all my life. I'd been in and around horses since I was about 3 years old, and left school at 16, straight into working with horses. They were my passion. And actually, I entered the three-day eventing world about 5 years after leaving school, where I'd been working just with dressage horses. And so as a, I don't know, 21-year-old adult, I thought I knew everything about horses, right? I'd been doing it since I was 3. I rode every day, and it was my life, my passion. And I went to work for an Olympic three-day event rider in 1992, and it was a rude awakening, but in a really good way, because I kind of came in. I guess the first part was the recruitment process. It was a tiny advert in the Horse and Hound, which is a national equestrian magazine.
And did you subscribe to Horse and Hound
of course
as a
I
teen?
did. Yeah, of course I did. Or probably my mother paid for it at the time.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely was an avid reader.
And what did the ad say? Can you say
The
that?
ad said Olympic equestrian looking for groom, must be of a good riding standard.
Okay.
And at the time I was already working with horses, and your listeners may not know much about horses, but as in any sporting environment, you have your idols as a kid. You're growing up, in football, it might be Messi. At my age, back in the 80s, when I was looking up to my heroines in sport, it was a lady by the name of Virginia Holgate. Or Ginny Holgate.
Right.
And I had posters of her on my bedroom wall. I had no idea that when I applied for this role, and it was just a telephone number that I had to call, no idea who the rider was. So
Right.
when I rang the number and found out it was her, I was completely blown away,
I
but
bet.
even more excited about actually, maybe going to work for my idol. When it came down to it, there were 350 applicants, and the interview lasted for a full day. So my mother had to drive me up to the establishment where I spent the day kind of proving my worth. So they chucked you straight in, do this with the horses, try this, show me how you do this. And then I think if you got through the 6 or 7 hours of the day, you then got to ride in the final 2 hours and they watched you riding. Based on the fact that I'd been doing it all my life, I was kind of
Mm.
comfortably confident.
Yes, for sure.
Um, but when you hear that there were 350 applicants, and then we had an interview where we actually sat down with Ginny's mother, who was like the kind of matriarch of the organization. Um, and I learned as a 20-year-old that there was no salary. Um,
I
it
was going to
was
ask
you,
about the package.
you were there for the privilege. Now, don't get me wrong, I got to live in this beautiful kind of manor house
Yes.
in the beautiful grounds in Wiltshire. But yeah, there was no pay. In fact, my mother had to pay a £20 a week kind of, I guess, like a feeding,
Bread and, but yeah, food and
yeah,
board.
bread and food and board for me to stay there. But the flip side of that was that I was going to be in a position where I was working with an elite
Mm.
team of
Yeah.
athletes, albeit in the equestrian world, and I would learn how to hone my craft and, the 15, 18 years of horses that I'd been doing beforehand would come into kind of
Mm.
that next level.
Yes.
And so I was hopeful that I would get it, but I also did think, 350 applicants, there's probably no chance it's going to be me.
Correct. The chances
But
are.
it
But
was.
this episode of the Channel's Own podcast is brought to you by In Connection, the trusted events agency to some of the biggest names in IT. In Connection knows that in today's fast-paced world, it's not just about delivering a return on your event's investment. It's about delivering unforgettable experiences. Because some events fade within hours, while others become memories that are talked about for years. In Connection, the go-to event agency for the IT channel, creating memories that matter.
350 applicants, there's probably no chance it's going to be me.
Correct. The chances are.
But it
But
was.
as you say, but it is. It must be. It's like a closed shop, isn't it? There's only so many elite riders and stables, and say
Yeah.
to actually get the opportunity to operate at that level, you were very, very fortunate, and
Yeah.
undoubtedly. So,
Yeah. And there
um,
were there were two positions. So yeah, I think about 6 weeks later I chugged up the M4 in my 1970s clapped out old Beetle and
should have
rocked
kept
up
it.
on the doors. I know, don't trust me, I know. Um yeah, turned up on the doorstep and I didn't know what to expect. I was excited. I was a bit apprehensive, but it was like anything. If you're following your heart, if you're following your
Yeah,
passion,
yeah.
you just jump in both feet.
And what does a typical day look like back then?
Uh, on the yard for 6 in the morning. And
All through the year, right? It's
doesn't
365
matter.
days, right?
360, yeah, horses don't stop for anyone. So,
Right.
6 in the morning, and you work through till half 8, where you're basically caring for the horses, mucking them out, putting them out in the field, making sure they've fed, watered, etc. And at half 8, you then go and have your breakfast. You come back out at 9 o'clock. And the first ride goes out. So you're exercising horses then between 9 and 1.
Right.
And that happens, if it's in the winter, it could be more arena work. If it's in the summer, you could be out walking, out hacking and taking them to the gallops or doing specific, depending on the time of the season and their fitness level and what level of competition they were at, you would be doing different exercises with them.
Mm.
And then 1 o'clock was lunch, 45 minutes, and then it was back in. You bedded the horses down. The afternoon was all about maintenance of the horses, the fields, the stables. So it was all about cleaning, smartening things up, making sure the horses were comfortable. And then it was bedding down at 5:30 or 5 to 5:30, where you would literally, as it says, bed them down so everything was comfortable for their evening,
Mm.
feed, water, etc. Then again, you would come back out at 6:30 and we would give the next feed because they had a feed at 4 and a feed at 6:30.
Right.
Um, and then the last check at night was at 9:30 at night. And that was like a 20-minute, or there was only 10 horses, so it wasn't too onerous in terms of that. But that was 5.5 days a week, sorry, 6.5 days a week. So I had half a day off a week. for 2 years.
And was it the afternoon or was it the morning that you had off?
Well, it's good that you asked that, because lay-ins are very important when you're getting up at 6 in the morning.
Yeah,
And every other week,
yes,
it was you got the morning off, so you didn't have to start work till 1.
Right, right. So that it sounds, as I said, the systems in place there, the routine is part and parcel of it. So that was the routine that is required, is necessary for horses performing and competing at that level.
Yeah.
Is the rider similarly disciplined and routined, or was Ginny out shopping all day, ladies and lunch, and maybe just turn up and do a little bit of riding?
It's a really interesting one, actually. She was really hands-on. There was a team of 3. There was Ginny, her mum Heather, who was the kind of the driving force behind the whole operation, and then her trainer Dot, and Heather and Dot lived on site with us. Ginny lived slightly off site. Now Ginny was a good time girl with her London friends, and
this is about the same
dinner
time
parties.
Isn't Riders was
Exactly,
Jilly Cooper.
You got it. And so what happens? And it was actually, for me, it was amazing, because, as I said, I'd grown up as a little girl with posters of her on my bedroom wall.
That's extraordinary.
I would get the occasional, the yard phone would ring, which didn't ring very often, and it would be Ginny at her house at sort of 8:30 in the morning, ringing hoping that one of us girls who was having breakfast would be in the bungalow, and she would say, I need one of you girls to come and pick me up. I had a bit of a heavy night last night, and Mummy will shoot me if I drive myself. So one of us would jump in. We had a little Bedford Rascal van that we would spin 10 minutes down the road, go and pick her up in her Golf and bring her back.
Right.
So she did live the life of a
it's quite upper class, I think, isn't it? I would have thought, because horse riding it must take in all members of society at some level, but at the very top, it probably is the case, because it's a very expensive sport. Maybe a little bit like Formula One.
Sport.
It's those guys who get good at Formula One have had hundreds of thousands spent on them in their youth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is similar in horse riding.
And it is similar. It's not Formula One level by any way or means. She was sponsored by Citibank through those years, so she had a good sponsorship, and her upbringing, her father was in the Navy, so she travelled the world, and had a good upbringing, but she had been doing this sport since she was sort of 13, 14 years old, but the sport has progressed like most sports as well. And the prize money has always been very low, and it still is. It's better than it was. Right. But fundamentally, she was an athlete who was focused on her performance, and then so she went to the gym, she did all of the right physio and the right the visualization and mindset training. She had a specific coach for that, but then when she turned up at the yard by 9 o'clock in the morning to ride, that was her until 3 o'clock in the afternoon with us, training the horses, working with us. Some days we would be on site, some days we would be out cross-country training at different places, but she was always there and always fueled by black coffee and a Marlboro Light.
I've got a black coffee here. I don't have a Marlboro Light, but it sounds like an extremely disciplined life. For everybody involved, though, as I said, from the rider to the groom, everybody working to that type of schedule. Now, and for how long did you do that? You say, was that from the age of 16?
So I was 20 when I did that job, but for a different. I worked for a dressage rider from the age of 16 to 20, and then I went to work for Ginny, and I was with Ginny for 2 years. In the last 2 years of her career, so she retired at the end of 93.
Right.
So and then I went on to do the same job elsewhere.
Right. Were you getting paid by this point, or were you still?
No, I was still 2 years, no pay. It was all for the love of the game.
For the love of it, and in some respects, it just shows your dedication and I'd say your love for it, and that I suppose is what they're going to need. They need to see. They need to see that in anybody who's going to be involved with it at that level. So, which elements would you say then because it formed the foundation of your career. And my
Of course,
guess
yeah.
is that they say the things you learn early on, and there'll have been some very important lessons there, but many of those will have transitioned and transferred through even to what you're doing
Mm,
now. I'm just wondering as
mm.
to what elements do you think it taught you that you still utilize now in your work at Okta?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think in my early sales career, if I start at my early sales career, so I started at Dell, that was my first real IT job. Um, for me, it was just about being able to talk to different people and being able to manage relationships, whether you were and where that came from was in the equestrian world, you know, ultimately you're shoveling horse dirt around. Um, dealing with these equine athletes, making sure they're polished and fit and healthy at performing at the top of their game. In that process, you're meeting with everyone from, the local farmer who
Yeah,
delivers the hay, right through to, the team vet for the team GB horses who's, been through Royal Veterinary School and been doing this for 60 years and is
yeah.
like the most revered veterinarian across the country, right through to, dealing with, Princess Anne and
I
Captain
was
Mark
going to say
Phillips
even
because of
royalty.
their even royalty. So you go, I think at a young age, I was able to articulate myself in front of any
Yes,
type of person.
yes.
And I was never afraid to engage or ask for help. And of course, when I eventually stumbled into sales, it's the same thing, right? You can be talking to when you walk into the office
Mm,
in the morning,
mm.
you see the lady who back in the day, because it's not really doesn't really happen that much anymore, but when I joined Dell
The
in
reception, you mean?
99,
Yeah,
the lady on reception, right?
yeah,
You build
totally.
that relationship right through to, when
Yes.
the VPs of EMEA and, Michael Dale himself would wander in. I didn't have a fear to be engaged with and
Mm.
articulating with those individuals. So I think one of the lessons that I carried across from working in the equestrian world into IT was just to try and relate and
Yes.
build relationships and build
Yes,
rapport with
yes.
people.
I started like yourself at a young age. I had pictures of Richie Blackmore on my bedroom wall. He was the guitarist for Deep Purple, by the way. But I ended up selling musical instruments in a retail environment. But
Yeah.
similarly, I thought the same there. I might have, the landed gentry coming in to buy a piano for the young child, or somebody who's basically children were learning violin or clarinet. But at the same time, you might even have the busker coming in who's looking to buy cheap guitar strings to repair his guitar. You'd have all sorts. You had to be able to
Yeah.
deal with them all. And I think it's great to have that at an early age. I have two daughters. One daughter, by the way, works at Computer Centre. Oh, sorry, she's now at
Ah,
HPE.
okay.
But I think one of the things, although she was a grad, but a graphic design grad, one of the things that appealed to CC during her interview process was, during her holidays, she'd work behind a bar. And a bar, I think,
Yeah.
is similar. Depends on where,
Yeah.
where it is, but where we are in Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
Again, it was
They're
all
quite nice
sorts,
bars.
absolutely, all sorts of people. Let's hope these bars are going to remain because I keep watching the news and they're telling me they're all going to
Oh,
close
I
from what
know,
I can
don't.
see. So, anything else you said? So your ability to get on
Yeah.
with, not to be intimidated by,
Yeah.
and to speak peer to peer, really on the level,
Yeah.
with individuals. And what's wonderful, you're saying that these people also happy to would deal with you in
Yes,
similarly.
exactly, exactly. Because, fundamentally, you're all there for the welfare of the horse and the end goal, which is to
Yes,
go out there and win the
yes,
competition or win the
yeah.
gold
You're on the
medal.
team.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very much a team. And, back in the day, then it was always the rider and the horse that got the kind of applaud it's very different now. Now the grooms are very much more brought to the forefront. But, it is a team event. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that for me has paid dividends in my career since I came into IT is, this is a sales is a team game.
I was going to
No,
ask that. I mean, is it because I'm not sure I would immediately come because I even used the term in the introduction, individual contributor,
yeah,
but which is but it's part of a team, isn't it? I
Of course.
suppose.
And if you think about it, if someone came to me and said, right, here's your target, Donna, at the beginning of the year, good luck, and I was just left to my own devices and I had nothing, you know, okay, I'm resourceful, I would find a way, but
Yes.
that way would be bringing people with me. And so, because you can't do everything yourself, and we surround ourselves and with specialists, and this again was the thing from the equestrian world. My role was to do X, Ginny's role was to do Y, and we knew our roles, and we knew exactly what needed to be done at what time in which occasion. And it's the same in sales. I work with solution engineers and I've worked with multiple over my almost 30 years in this role. um if I didn't have a good SE, or even an SE, let's just say an SE, if
Yes.
I don't have a solutions engineer, I can't do it, because
No.
my limit is here. Okay, I can sometimes try and push depending on how confident I'm feeling, but fundamentally, you need the specialists to come in and do the bit that they are good at, because you
Yes.
can't do everything.
Yes.
And so, this is where I see my role very much as a conduit for all of the other, right from the beginning of the sales funnel, so marketing and our business development reps who are there, fielding and taking all of those initial conversations,
Right.
getting people that we can start having that sales conversation with, right from that early top of funnel, right through to, the order management and the processing and the kind of the contractual side. So when you get down to the nitty gritty, it's a big team.
Yes.
And, one of the things I think that's benefited me over all of the companies that I've worked for is I very much drive engagement across those teams. And also, I think, make myself accountable. So if I say this is one of the things that I know for sure has come from my time with the horses, is if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it.
Yes.
Because in the equestrian world, these are live animals. They have a mind of their own. They are dangerous. People do die. If you don't do what you'll say you're going to do, or fulfill the role that is expected of you when you're
Right.
expected to
Well,
do it, it has consequences.
yes.
And in some cases, those consequences can be fatal. If you're doing up straps and buckles on equipment that is being used in a fast-paced, equestrian environment, if it's not correct, or it's then, accidents happen,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it can be really dangerous.
It could be
So the
lethal, couldn't
account
it? Yeah.
yeah, the accountability plays also in the sales game, right? If I
Yes.
don't do for a customer or a prospect what I say I'm going to deliver for them, then their trust in me, their experience of my company, the company that I work for, is tainted, because I've said I'm going to call them back, or I'll send them that bit of information,
Yes.
but I got distracted, I forgot, didn't get it.
Yes.
So they're
Yes.
going to go off and talk to someone else,
Yeah,
right?
I said, and they may not get that level of commitment or follow through. I once did some training with some guys out in Canada, and I think he said there were 4 rules to success in life. I think it was something like, always show up on time, say please and thank you. I mean, these are things again that were drummed into you. Um, do what you say and finish what you
Yeah,
start. And it's also your office is in Farringdon. Farringdon's in the
it
city
is. Yeah.
city of London. City of London was founded. If I went to the stock exchange, it used to be in kind of, I think it was Old Broad Street there. But the phrase there used to be "my word is my bond." That was
Mm,
the foundation really of commerce back in the day. Probably has diminished and dissipated to a greater or lesser degree, I think, over the years. But
mm,
I'm with you 100% on that. I think that doing what you say, finishing what you start. The other thing you said there that jumped out at me as well, you said you're resourceful. And
mm,
again, another quote from elsewhere, somebody once said, it's not about a lack of resources, it's about a lack of resourcefulness. Because
yeah.
it may have been a time when you don't have, and I'm sure it must have been the case looking out, you don't have the tools that you need there on the day. You have to make do. You might have to
You have to improvise,
find
right?
some improvise and do something with something else. The
Yeah.
difference I would have thought, though, Donna, is between although the complexity we talked about, but the routines of the that equestrian world, the likelihood is you could have taken one day and another day, they would be virtually identical. The days
Yeah,
would be so routine. I'm
yeah,
not sure that we can do that in the modern world of work. The things there's so much uncertainty, so many things that can come in and change. You
I
have to have
agree.
that ability then to be able to bob and weave, which you seem to have as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll kind of I'll say that, the routine is important, but you can still bob and change and have routine. I know
Yes,
that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but the fundamentals always have to be there.
yes,
And those fundamentals are the routine. And so in the equestrian world, for me, it didn't matter whether we were at home in a non-competition scenario with the horses, or if we were traveling to France in a horse box with six horses, the routine for the horses had to stay the same. So you then became resourceful. So yes, they might have been on a ferry for 3 hours in the back of a lorry, but so the first thing you do is, okay, this horse hasn't moved its legs for, potentially 3.5 hours. So as soon as we land in France, we need to find somewhere to park so that we can unload all of these horses and get them walking for an hour because
right.
horses need to move in order to keep the blood circulating and keep their digestive juices flowing. They're fairly complex animals. And so, that resourcefulness of, yes, you still have that routine, but you have to change it up because you're traveling, because you're away at an event, is still there. And I think, that comes into the work we do as well. No salesperson is successful without the foundations of a pipeline. And that pipeline is the routine, right? If you're
Yes,
not doing the front end grind and finding those initial conversations, you can be the best closer in the world. But if there's nothing coming, there's going to be nothing to close. So the foundational routine
yeah,
of pipe gen, initial conversations, discovery calls, all has to be your baseline. And it doesn't matter whether it's a, week one Q1 or Q3 of week 12 of Q4. You still need to be doing all of that. And I know, some of us are better at some things than others. But the routine in sales, I think, is still is
still
still
there.
the
Yeah, well,
fundamental.
you see it that way, and I also think that it sounds from what you're saying is that you also you see yourself as part of the larger team, and that is said
Oh,
so,
for sure.
which is again I would have said fundamental and a contributing element to your success. Let's move off the equestrian world for a little bit onto the world of work for anyone
Yeah.
who doesn't live in the world of cybersecurity in general and
Yeah.
identity in particular. So, how do you describe the work that you do now and what Okta or Auth0 do? How do you describe it?
Um, so for the non-IT people that I work with, I tell them, and it is fundamentally, our strapline, our organization is here to allow any person to safely use any technology in any part at any time to do anything.
Right,
Um, our reason for being as an organization is to ensure that the moment you sit down at your desk at work and log into your computer, or you log into an app for your shopping or your bank, that digital identity that you're creating, so that Donna Joyce at googlemail.com and my password are protected.
right,
And it's everything that sits behind that is what Okta does.
right. So, I mean, people are we don't know it, but if you're using the internet, you're probably using
Yeah,
Okta are there somewhere
for sure. Yeah, for
in the
sure.
mix.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've never worked in public sector as the other one for me, and but
Hmm.
you are now a public sector
Yeah.
specialist, plant director there. But you have in the past you have been on the enterprise side
Yeah.
the business as well. For somebody who hasn't sold in the public, how do they differ? We used to in the past. sometimes they even used to look different, didn't they? The public sector salespeople, they were slightly, maybe they were a little bit older, they were a little bit
Yes.
calmer because perhaps they
Yeah.
had more consistent pipeline, I suppose, compared
Yeah.
to the
Or it
new
just took
biz
longer.
guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's the difference, do you think?
Um, Look, the public sector is a place full of its own rules and regulations that vary very much from the commercial world. Um, the buying cycles are longer. You are constantly up against changing priorities.
Mm.
If you think about, governments.
Any election, something changes.
Yeah, and even without an election, right? It's a change of policy can completely change the direction on an opportunity. So it's very much a longer process. There are and this is my own personal opinion
Mm.
rather than one of the company I work for, but the public sector here in the UK from an identity perspective is behind other countries. As a government organization, we have this conversation around digital identity. Are we going to
Mhm.
have, aren't we going to, etc. All in the meantime, we do have digital identities online in our civilian lives as
Yeah,
citizens of the UK. If you've ever tried to log into, gov.uk,
I have.
the examples are there. Even in your own local, I live in Berkshire, the Wokingham, Borough Council website. So it's everywhere. Um, it's just a lot slower and not as advanced. Whereas when you look at the commercial world and you
Mm.
look at your Amazons and your Sky Scanners and your, British Airways, those apps and digital services that we use on a daily basis, they're flying ahead. I don't even have to have a password to get into, most of the applications because, I'm just using my my
Yes.
Face ID on my
Yeah.
phone.
Yes.
So the public sector, from an identity perspective, public sector is a little bit behind, but it's planning to catch up. And for organizations within the public sector, it's complex. It's not one person making a decision on one thing. It's multiple. There's so much red tape. It's very difficult. They can't procure specific ways. They have to go this way. And so it makes it a lot slower. And so what it means for me or for us as public sector salespeople is you're running multiple threads and over a longer time period.
Right. 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 And as a final kind of question on the work front there, we're recording this at the beginning of 2026, and
Mm,
Auth0 do have some AI solutions. So,
yeah.
from a public sector perspective, then how are they perceiving AI? Are they going to take it on and take to it the way that maybe the rest of the enterprise world has, or are they once again are they going to be a little bit more cautious and patient in their execution and discovery?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think centrally from government, there's an absolute drive to move as quickly as they can, but safely with
Yeah.
AI. And we see that by the investment that government are making in allowing some chatbots and some large language models into specific organizations. So they're very heavily monitored and, being used in particular ways. On the other side of that, there are development organizations within public sector, so small technical developer teams
Right.
who are in there building agents and going rogue is probably more of a is
Got
me
you.
using a bit of a wild
Skunk
word, but
works or kind of special operations type of thing, is it?
but
So
but I think there's probably groups of young
yes.
excited developers who are seeing what they can build with AI, and so they're running off and maybe using it without having any of those guardrails in place. And I think that's part of challenge that the crossroads that it's not just government, but I think any organization is at the moment with the whole AI piece is
Yes.
how do we innovate and drive forward and use AI to our advantage so that we can be better than our competitors, or that we can, improve our customers' experience versus it becoming uncontrollable and something that goes rogue within our organization and we become the next headline in the papers.
I guess the analogy I've used on that, I don't know if you might have seen the movie clip anyway, but a Disney movie, Fantasia.
Yes.
But there is Mickey Mouse as the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
That's right, yeah.
And he has his book of spells, and he's been given a task to do. In some respects, he's like a groom. He's been given a kind of fundamental task. He's got a mop and a bucket, and he's got to clean. I think he's got to sweep up for the sorcerer, but basically he gets ahead of himself and then casts a spell on the broom and the bucket, and then there's more brooms and buckets, which I think is like AI proliferation.
Yeah.
And then eventually, of course, he's virtually drowning under it. So I think that does give one of the perspectives. I don't know whether that's kind of, well, I can't say it's being blown out of all proportion. It's not. I mean, it is a major threat, but I do see AI as more of a good
For sure.
than a bad. So, and my guess is, considering is it Auth0 for agentic AI? You're
Correct.
in a sweet spot at the moment. You're going to have a very busy few years.
Absolutely.
So, good luck to you and the rest of the team at Okta on that. I'm going to ask you one last question then,
Okay.
which is really on behalf of, and I think our friends at InConnection. InConnection are an events management company. They're the sponsor of the Channel Zone, and I've been asking all of the guests on this series to pick out their favourite or most memorable corporate hospitality type event, of which I think you will have been on many. So whether it's a President's Club or a special event for customers or for partners, is there one thing that comes to mind? What's your most memorable event?
There are quite a few. And so my most memorable event, maybe for all the wrong reasons, was one of my first corporate trips at Dell, where we had an annual target so that said, if you reach this, we'll take you all to Euro Disney.
Right.
And so we all jumped on the Eurostar, which was, I can't remember when the Eurostar first came out, but this would have been the early 2000s.
Right.
So I think it was probably 2000, 2001 this happened. And there was about 80 of us, all on Eurostar, all over the place because you didn't have tickets with seats. Anyway, we all ended up coming into just one carriage where there was, funnily enough, a bar. We left wherever it leaves from, St Pancras, and we ended up the train had to stop at whatever the very last stop was. It wasn't scheduled to stop there before it crossed the channel because it had to restock with alcohol because we'd emptied the whole train by the time we got to the edge of the country.
You hadn't even left the UK at that point.
No.
And actually, if you think about it, I couldn't tell you exactly, but that's not much of a distance. You're probably talking only 100 miles, 120 miles maybe.
Yeah, I don't think we'd gone
right.
far.
I can imagine then, but it was a great event.
One of my most memorable. It was a great event.
And listen, if it sticks in your mind, and it's great that it was, as I said, one of those early President's Club, whatever, they give you a target to do, and I hope it was the fact that they said everyone who achieves it gets to go.
It's exactly what it was. Yeah, the whole public sector organisation.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Those are great times, and I'm sure there's more of those to come in the not too distant future for yourself and your colleagues at Okta. So, Donna, thanks ever so much. It's been super. I've learned an awful lot, and I'm more curious and interested now, perhaps in horse jumping or 3-day eventing than perhaps I've ever been. Thanks ever so much for your time.
No problem.
I hope you've enjoyed. I'm sure our listeners and viewers are going to enjoy it as much as we have. And thank you very, very much for being here. And I'll see you again in the not too distant future. Until then,
we will indeed.
All the best.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Take care.